every year we're on the same schedule. Okay. Hello. Yeah, it's working. Let me zoom out. Okay. All right, so one thing I want to tell you is this. This is a question that always screw up students. So there's fundamentally difference of this. So let's just say sine inverse of negative half. Let's see how many of you guys can give me the right answer. Raise your hand if you think of the answer. Yes, Daniel.
11 pi over 6 and 7 pi over 6.
Okay. Anybody else? Rebo?
Then it's just over.
Okay. Anybody else have different answer? So that's the only answer you guys have? So yes. Only 11 pi over 6. Okay. That's only you guys have so far? Okay, so it turns out that's good that you all make mistakes. And so that's why I'm here, is that's actually not a correct answer. You're misunderstanding the questions. If the question's like this, then you would have been right. You would have been right. This would be correct. Now, what happened is this question is a little bit different than the other question, is because this one is asking, this is a y value, because sine is talking about y, right? So y value. When y value is equal to negative half, what is the angle? In radian, but within the restriction. So what is the restrictions, right? What is the restriction? So what do you think the answer is? Negative pi over 6 is correct. So now negative pi over 6, according to Rangraj says, is negative pi over 6. And ideally, you probably don't need to know the reason why. But I'm still going to explain to you the reason why, because I'm a person that just care about why more than I'm those kids that why is this? Why is not this, right? That's actually more important. So let's look at y and just pay attention to sine graph. So y restrictions, right? If I look at a sine graph, it should look like something like this. It should be oscillate start from 0, like this, and like this. So the idea is this: if you have sine graph, now whatever your pre-calc teacher should have told you says, in order for function to have a inverse, you must pass horizontal line test. And if you didn't pass horizontal line test, you cannot have inverse. So if I were to do a horizontal line test right now, I would have failed miserably. I would intersect more than once. So I'm going to start erasing from both sides. And you're going to tell me when to stop, because I'm going to erase partially. So I'm going to erase this part. Am I past horizontal line test? By the way, this is a 2 pi and negative 2 pi. And then I'm going to erase this part. I'm going to erase this part. And that's going to be the whole oscillation. But the problem is still fail horizontal line test. So then I'm going to do one more to here and to here. And am I passing?
Yeah.
Yes. So what happened is that this peak here, I got a pi over 2. And this is a negative pi over 2. So there was a restriction from negative pi to pi over 2, because that's a domain restriction. You have to restrict that to this place. Okay, so that's the case, that's why your answer has to be within this. Now, so for sine, if inside the unit circle, it's going to look like this. It's basically this restriction right here. And you cannot pass this line. If you pass this line, you die. You get electrocuted every single time. So let's look at your first thought process. Your first thought process was 7 pi over 6. You die right here before you even get to the destination. Your second thought process going like here, you die twice before you go to destinations. So yeah, so my analogy is I always told students as it's like go to Alabama, right? And you decide to be cute. You decide to go to Daytona and swim across the Atlantic, go to Cape Town, and then swim to California, and then go from California, drive to Alabama. It just doesn't make sense because you die so many times on the way there. There's no way you swim across the Atlantic, right? So you could have just walked to Alabama. You're gonna be there in a couple months, but you decide to go the other way. That's not. So the thing is, I can find my solution going backwards, right? Because angle is not strictly positive. So we know solution is somewhere around this side. Guess what? Just go backwards. Negative pi over 6. And that's what negative pi over 6 comes into play. Okay, so that is the reason, and that's why most of people always get the answer confused. And I don't want you to get confused because later on we're going to use it. I can also ask you tan inverse of negative root 3, and you can tell me that's correct answer. Now, by the way, sine inverse and tan inverse had the same restriction, except tan inverse can't even touch the x-axis. And there's a reason why. If you look at a sine graph, if you look at a tangent graph, that graph doesn't even touch the pi over 2. So therefore, they don't even have, they can go close to pi over 2, but not touching it. For tangent graph, they're not passing that. So therefore, what is tan inverse of negative square root 3? Remember, you had to follow restriction. Also, there's a cosine restriction. I'm going to tell you. Cosine restriction is the top 2 quadrant. It's going here. So cosine inverse of x is going to be the top 2. And but cosine usually never make mistake because you don't go past that as often. Negative pi over 3 is good. And yeah, that's it. Final answer is negative pi over 3. So hopefully you guys understand that. Everybody's still confused. I think Safia should say she's confused. She's asking Katie, but it's fine. He basically asks you what is the value if tangent value is equal to negative square root 3. What would be the radian? The radian has to be pi over 3, but it has to be on the 4th quadrant. Does that make sense? Okay, so now I am gonna ask you an interesting question. What is sine inverse of sine of 5 pi over 4? Now, most of the lazy smart student usually have a tendency to say, yeah, I'm smart. Sine inverse and sine cancel out. The answer is 5 pi over 4. And I'm like, yes, mark it wrong. Just because they didn't pay attention, there was a restriction. So you go with, usually math simple go with inside and outside. The order operation start with a sine of 5 pi over 4. So if you do that, then you will have sine inverse of square root 2 over 2 negative. And now you can answer the question. That's going to be negative pi over 4. That means the first two quadrants. And I love to set up those questions. Got you question says, hey, haha, you're not smart as you think.
Go back up a little bit to the ratio of. Yeah.
This one is negative pi over 3. So.
That the blue one right next to the sine graph, that's the sine and tangent, right?
Yeah. It's that tangent don't touch the axis. Sine can touch the axis.
Wow.
So you can have inverse sine of 1. And you're going to say that's equal to pi over 2. But you cannot have inverse sine of infinite. Because over there is infinite. Yes, a rebuff?
You got inverse tangent negative root 3.
I told students to memorize 3 values. The value I asked student to memorize for 10 is really easy one. The first one you don't need to memorize is tangent of pi over 4 is equal to 1. And so that one is very easy because you got square root 2 over 2 over square root 2 over 2. That's just 1. That don't need memorizing. So there's only down to 2 values. So it'll be tangent of pi over 6. Now tangent of pi over 6 is always square root 3 over 3. And if you don't know, you can always work it out. Now tangent of pi over 3 is always equal to square root 3. So I know it's square root 3. If it's square root 3, it has to be in term of pi over 3. In term of pi over 3, that's going to be the final answer. Does that make sense? Why is it negative?
How does the inverse part play into it?
Yeah, inverse part just means that if I have x, y, if I have y over x equal to negative square root 3, so I know I have to use this one. Now the inverse is gonna tell you, so inverse basically, so I do a quadrant check. A quadrant check means if I have inverse tangent, I'm gonna have this 2 quadrant. And if I have a negative, I have to be this quadrant. So it has to be at a 4th quadrant. So it'd be 4th quadrant in terms of the value going to get square root 3. So therefore, it's going to be negative pi over 3. So it has to be a 4th quadrant and size of negative pi over 3. I cannot get any value because if it's 1, then I will get negative pi over 4. And if it's square root 3 over 3, I would get negative pi over 6. So basically, that's recalling that value of this help me how to solve the problem.
So say we had sine of x equals 1/2, for example.
Sine of x equal to 1/2, or sine inverse of 1/2, like this?
So not inverse, just like what we were doing yesterday. Sine of x equals 1/2, right?
Sine of x equal to 1/2, okay?
Yeah. So what I was thinking is when you write out, so you divide by sine on both sides, and you write out.
You cannot divide by sine on both sides.
So
you can isolate a sine, so you can do, what you're supposed to do is just figure out which value I can plug in is going to give me 1/2, right? So this part you think about is pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6.
Yeah.
But you're not doing sine inverse on both sides.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got shit. I've been doing that wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, this doesn't have a restriction inference. The other question does because of inverse. And inverse is because due to inverse function.
I got you. How I've been doing,
Yeah, I probably think I know what you probably do is to get rid of sine, I have to do sine inverse on both sides.
Yep,
so sine inverse and sine cancel out. But as you see that sine inverse and sine doesn't cancel out.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously that doesn't cancel out because the answer would be 5 pi over 4 if it cancel out.
Yeah.
So you get some question about practicing this. They're not that bad, but we're gonna talk about 2 other questions that you might need to know. Is something like this. So I'm gonna say it's tan inverse of negative 1 of negative 4, and I'm gonna say is, I don't know, cosine. This one's a little bit more trickier. Now, I hate when it's -4. Because -4 is really deceiving. Technically, it should be -4/1. And technically, it should be like, if you read it correctly, it should be like this. -4/1. I don't know which negative sign belong to, but it's going to be -4/1. Now, if you recognize this, can I assume that this is an angle? So tan inverse of -4/1 is equal to some type of data. What's up? So what does that also mean? That also means I'm going to go check. So I'm going to do a quadrant check here. If I do a quadrant check, I'm going to go here. I'm going to say, oh, okay, tan inverse. Boom, this 2 quadrant. Tan inverse is negative. This is the quadrant I want to draw my triangle. So I'm going to draw a reference triangle. You've done this last year. This is not the first time.
Yeah.
And this side has to be -4. Why? Because negative not going to be on the x, because it's on the positive, right? So this negative side, you had to decide this go into the 4, not go into the 1. Because the 4 is the y value, but it has to go down into the -4. And this part has to be 1 to get this part. And nice thing is, Pythagorean identity, you're going to find out this is square root of 17. Hopefully, I don't need to show you how to do that. So therefore, cosine of this theta is going to adjacent over hypotenuse. I'm almost finished. And adjacent is going to be 1 over hypotenuse is going to be square root of 17. So that is equal to square root of 17 over 17. So that's going to be part of your homework. And that's it. And there are 6 practice questions on that one. The answer is square root of 17 over 17 or 1 over square root of 17. What? What?
What's the second problem?
Second problem, sure. I might as well just finish. Some people will understand this, try to understand the second problem. I'm gonna show you second problem. I need you need a right bus. Tomo, do you need a right bus? Can you come here? The second question is gonna be secant of tan inverse of 2 over x. And you say, okay, let's figure out what this is. But this one just had to draw a triangle because this is the angle. This has a triangle like this. And this is 2. And this is the x. And we're going to assume that side z. So it'll be z squared equal to x squared plus 2 squared. So z is equal to square root x squared plus 4. So that's equal to x squared plus 4. Now secant is equal to, so secant of theta is equal to hypotenuse over adjacent, right? So hypotenuse is going to be square root x squared plus 4. Adjacent is going to be x. And that's the final answer. And that I can go over tomorrow again if you still have questions. Yes. Okay, so you had the right bus or no? Not today? Okay, so we're gonna, okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about, do you understand the stuff? This is the pre-calc you learned last year, right?
Yeah.
Did you take pre-calc last year? How'd you do it now?
Yeah, it's summer, so I forgot something.
Okay. Do you understand what we're talking about or no? Kind of? If you don't understand, please do ask. Hi.
I wanted to retake the unit circle.
Unit circle is in the back. Okay. What's up, chef?
I was struggling with the homework yesterday.
What? You struggle?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. As Matthew, Sheldon, or Rograj. You know, I called Dev chef today. He got so mad at me. I said, "You guys look at the same." He's like, "I can't believe you guys."
Devin shit.
Huh?
Devin shit.
You're both brown.
Yeah, you both well. And they have a similar style of skinning.
Yes.
Wait, who Dev?
Dev.
Oh, Dev.
I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce.
He says
Oh, I
it
thought you
that.
meant Devin.
No.
Wait.
Devin's black.
He says it that way.
Yeah.
I know he's not black. The last time I checked.
He says it that way, so I just.
Oh, yeah. Wait, which period is he in?
He's in BC Cup.
Third.
Okay, so let me get you started. Yeah, the paper's over there.
So you should be confusing his name with mine.
Okay, got it.
He's an older student.
Huh?
You should be calling me Dev, not him.
Really? Why?
He's an older student.
Okay. Older what?
He was with you last year too.